conditions happening over at our sister agencies within the MTA. For those who don't know, at the MTA we have transit, which runs the subways and buses, and then we have the two commuter railroads, Long Island Railroad and Metro North. Transit is employed mostly by minorities, and the commuter railroads are employed mostly by whites. There are very huge gaps in the ways we are treated. In terms of base pay, at about $76,000 per year, we train operators in transit make what Long Island Railroad engineers made way back in 2011, a decade ago. And besides a very weak Me Too clause with Long Island Railroad, there have been no steps made to close this gap. In fact, the Me Too clause wouldn't have even been enforceable if the Long Island Railroad Union had claimed that it impaired their ability to bargain with the MTA. In terms of discipline, I did a Freedom of Information Law request, which shows that they are disciplined less harsh than us too. For example, a conductor who opened the doors with no platform, allegedly, was only given a reprimand, while if a conductor did that in New York City Transit, they would be lucky to only be demoted to cleaner and still have a job. In terms of workload, I did get my hands on a bunch of Long Island Railroad schedules, and most 8-hour jobs had only 3 to 4 hours of cab time. While in New York City Transit, our 8-hour jobs are usually 5 to 6 hours of cab time, unless you happen to have 30 years of seniority. Due to poor management, the subways have a much lower on-time rate, so we often miss our breaks, including lunch, in a state that guarantees lunch breaks by law. In terms of health and safety, we work under the most disgusting conditions with crew rooms that are old and decrepit, subway tunnels filled with steel dust and dead rodent particles. We are subject to more assaults than Long Island Railroad and Metro North, yet even though the MTA has its own dedicated police force, they refuse to deploy the MTA police to New York City Transit except to enforce swiping into the new time clocks. Lastly, there is an enormous glass ceiling at the MTA. In fact, in the entire MTA's existence since the 1960s, there has only been white men to ever serve as the chair and CEO of the MTA. You guys have a lot of work to do in this area. Yes, there are a lot of white people that work in transit, and there are minorities that work in Long Island Railroad and Metro North, but that doesn't mean that discrimination doesn't exist. All it means is that rather than a disparate treatment charge, we should be lobbying the EEOC for a disparate impact charge instead. Thank you.
Okay, microphone number